Hello everyone. This video will show some general instructions for this assignment. This time you will assume that you will develop an audiovisual video commercial for the business that you are using as a case study for this course. A video commercial is suitable and flexible because it can be run in television. It can be run and distributed through streaming platforms, in YouTube, even in some display locations like inside shopping malls or airports where you have devices and television screens that show audiovisual material. So that's why you are going to assume that you will develop this type of content, but it is necessary to develop first a creative brief. The creative brief, as you are learning in chapter 9 of the textbook, specifically in exhibit 9.10, has a number of questions that must be answered like you see on your screen right now, right? So that's something you need to provide on the first page of the report. The specific questions which you see right now, these are generic, doesn't matter what good or service your business is selling. These questions need to be answered tailored to the specific characteristics and offerings of your business and their competition and the specific audience or target market, right? The needs and problems or wants that will be satisfied through these products. So all of these are things that you have already worked on in previous assignments. You already know lots of this information. So it's a matter of putting them here in a brief manner by answering each of the questions. So in your report, again, on the first page, you have to include these questions and their respective answers, right? So that's important. You also have to present a message strategy, objective, and method. And this is something that you will do looking at chapter 10. When you study chapter 10, you will see that companies may select different objectives for their communication, like those that you have here: promote brand recall, link a key attribute of the product to the brand, maybe persuade the consumer about something you want to persuade them about, perhaps generate some affective association connected to your brand or to your products. Maybe you want to scare or motivate the consumer into taking some actions, into going to the store or try what you are offering. So there is a list of different objectives. As you can see here, these are in chapter 10. And also in chapter 10, you will see that for each of those objectives of the message strategy, there are some corresponding methods, some specific methods for implementing those objectives. So you have to look at which ones are aligned to the specific objective, and in a paragraph, which will be on the second page of the report, you will discuss and justify why that objective that you are choosing from this list, which is explained in chapter 10, why these are adequate and you think will be effective in consistency with the segmentation, targeting, and positioning strategy for the business you are working on. And this is something, again, that you have already done to some extent in previous assignments. You already work with segmentation, you work with targeting, and have already an idea of the positioning. So how are these integrating and adding to that general approach? Well, that's what you have to describe in this second page. Why the second page? Well, because the first page more likely will be the entire creative brief part. Now, when you are describing this objective and method for the message strategy, make sure to indicate and identify with bold font the objective and method that you selected. Part C, you have to very briefly provide a description of the 4 stages of the consumer decision-making process that would be displayed or manifested in your target market segment or buyer persona, or the profile of the typical customer that would be exposed to your message strategy, right? So for instance, based on the creative brief, which will pursue accomplishing a objective and method that you described in the previous part, you gotta tell, well, how do you expect, if this is successful, the typical customer market segment or buyer persona of your business, how it would respond to your message strategy and your communication advertising material by going through the 4 decision-making process stages. This is from chapter 5, remember. You already look at chapter 5. You have first need recognition. That's the first step of the consumer decision-making process. Then you have information search and evaluation of alternatives. Then you have a purchase decision, and then a post-purchase use and evaluation. So what is what that typical target market segment would go through in those 4 stages? Make sure to also use bold font to identify each of the 4 stages in your report. You have to provide references, of course, because you are using materials such as the textbook and other material that you want to incorporate. Of course, you are welcome to do so. One final comment, and this is highlighted in yellow on the first page of this instructions document. At this point, you will not worry about describing specific promotional mix activities yet. Just comply with what you are required to do in this assignment, but you don't have yet to say whether you will use social media, whether you will use public relations, or do some type of direct marketing or very specific tactics related to the advertising and promotional activities. Not yet, because that's gonna come in a future assignment. If you have any question, please feel free to send me an email